So, Peace asked me to come talk to you guys, and I wanted to come share from pain of my experience so that you don't have to go through that again. And what I'm going to cover today are things I think have shaped me and continue to shape me as an operator, and I hope will shape you. All right. So let's get into it. They read through my profile, but let's get into some of the details, right? So I've had a bunch of different titles. I've worked from seed stage to a now listed company, and I have done this in a bunch of countries, right? So that adaptability is key. And lots of people tend to ask me how I do it. You kind of have to be a little bit of a shapeshifter, but then the challenge is how do you respond to the situation at hand without changing who you are? And I think it comes from a lot of understanding. Over time, I've learned to observe people, observe environments, and extract meaning from that. And I'll talk through some of the ways and situations that call for me to do that, right? But you need to understand, first and foremost, what does success look like in that context, right? And what are the incentives to get you what you want in that context? So, success in America is different from success in Nigeria. I remember when I first moved back, and I would send somebody an email and they wouldn't respond. I couldn't understand why. Because in America, you send an email, they respond. You call people by their first name. Everything is fine. But then you come to Nigeria and you're working with some people where you send them an email, then you have to walk to their office to let them know you send them an email. In some extreme cases, you now have to read the very email that is on their screen for them, right? It confuses me when people still do it today when they call me, oh, Adia, I've sent you a love note. I'm like, yes, Outlook notified me. What's this extra phone call? They're like, oh, I just wanted to let you know. So even people are treating me like that, and I have to reassure them that I don't really require that treatment. But it's better to not resist what you see. You have to understand what is required in the context that you are in, especially if you enter an environment and you're trying to negotiate a deal in such an environment. Many of you here are going to be in business development. How many people are doing deals here? Okay, I see quite a few hands up, right? So imagine when you're trying to negotiate a deal, right? Like for instance, I just had a meeting with some Japanese people, and I had to get off that call and explain to my team how you have to address Japanese people in a certain sequence. You have to start with the Oga first and then go all the way down. You can't say no. If you don't like what they're offering you or pitching to you, you cannot say no in that meeting. Right? So there are completely different cultural norms. Imagine if you go into these meetings as your full Nigerian self, brash, loud, direct, you will fail. Okay? So adaptability is key. Next slide, please. So one of the ways to begin to be adaptable is self-awareness, right? So I read a version of this recently, and I thought it was very apt for this conversation. To be a great operator, you have to raise difficult issues without being difficult to work with. You have to bring up important topics without drawing importance to yourself. You are in charge of getting decisions made, but not making all the decisions. It's important that the sooner you learn this, the better. This took me at least a decade to learn, right? Because I'm Urobo. I'm from Delta State. Shout out to the people from Delta State in the room. We are tough nuts, right? And I grew up in a household where everybody has a strong voice. So I took my father, the energy of my ancestors, into every meeting. But then you enter these meetings, and then everybody will by the time you now do a 360, somebody will say, this girl, she sucks all the air out of the room. Or I don't like working with her. Or she's too loud. Or she's too direct. Doesn't she know when she's talking to her elders? There's nothing I've not heard. There's nothing. I've even been told I wasn't raised well. And I called my father. I said, well, they said your home training didn't enter. And he said they just want to press your neck. Don't mind them, right? But this is my strong Urobo father saying this to me. So you have to recognize who you are when you step into a room. One of the things that helped me start realizing this was when I took a personality test, maybe 20 years ago now, right? I did the MBTI test. Who here has taken their MBTI? Okay, good. So I am an ENTJ, and an ENTJ is often described as a commander. So you can imagine when I read my personality test and I was like, yay, Is this how people see me? Right? Now, it's really powerful when you know who you are, because then you understand your impact on others. But where this becomes really, really powerful is when you understand who you are dealing with. I have a boss that's a completely different, or had a boss that's a completely different personality type. Now, ENTJs are typically big thinkers. His personality type are not. So anytime I'm coming and I'm like waxing on about strategy, let's do this, in 2 years we'll get this, in 5 years we'll do this. I was just talking to somebody about thinking 15 years forward. You just look at me and be like, Ewelele, your head is in the clouds. And I started to resent that because I'm like, I need better feedback than that. But what I realized that his personality type biases him to see the short term in the clearest form. So if you come at him with like long-term thinking without the short-term thinking, he's going to think you've missed the point and you are incapable of solving the problem. So when you understand personality types, it allows you to sidestep a lot of possible disagreements that make it hard to do your job. So take your test. Anywhere you see a personality test, just take it and start on that journey of understanding who you are. So during the pandemic, this was in between the time I was Amigo and before I joined Thrive. So I didn't have a role. And of course, everybody was in a, like everybody else, I was in a dark place. I didn't know what the future looked like. And then someone asked me to do a panel. And I agreed because that was one way to keep busy, right? And then they now asked me, what title should we put? And I was confused because at that time I didn't have a job. So I didn't have a title or a company name to put beneath my name. So I said, wait, I'm coming. And then I started thinking about it and I was like, Jesus, do I know who I am outside of the context of my employer? And it led me down the road. I started asking some very important questions. So the first thing I did was I went to a fellow builder's LinkedIn who was in a similar situation. Sheni Suleiman, some of you may know him. And I called him, I said, Sheni, this is your venture builder and operator. Please, I'm going to just borrow it first. Right? And he was, and it opened up a conversation for both of us because we kind of have sabbaticals around the same time that forced us to recognize who we are when we walk into a room as an operator. That represented a massive shift for me. And somewhere in that year, I came up with a phrase that I live by today. And that phrase for me is that I, Adia, design, rebuild or build and scale two-sided tech businesses. And if you look at nearly every job I've had in the last 10 to 15 years, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So what is Migo? Migo connects money to borrowers, all right? So it connects people with funds to people who want to borrow funds. What is Thrive? Thrive connects farmers to people who want to buy food, right? What does a telecommunications company do? Right? It connects users to each other. So people ask me, Adia, how have you made all these transitions? And that's it. Right? And what you do, and sometimes it takes looking back, it takes talking to people, it takes examining your work, it takes examining the things you do that give you joy for you to figure out your Ikigai. Right? So anywhere you see me, you are usually going to see me talking about partnerships, mobile technology, scale, monetization. That's the consistency. Right? So, and I can do this anywhere. If I've done it with, look, when I went to take over Thrive, I didn't know that maize and corn were the same thing. Right? That's how little I knew about the sector. But what I knew was how to build a two-sided business. And that's what Thrive needed. Yeah? So it's important that you start on this journey of asking yourself these questions and understand the kind of problem you solve as an operator. So that then you now start to recognize the problems that you will make an impact solving. And then by the time you rinse, repeat, you then have your reputation. Okay? So all I've done here is repeat exactly the same core set of actions in different places. That's why I am known for who I am known to be. Next, please. Imagine if you're at home and you want to order lunch. Right? How many people here use Child Deck? Yeah? It's a simple decision, right? Just open your phone, go to your favorite restaurant, order lunch. Lunch arrives, you carry on with what you are doing. Very simple situation. Now, imagine you are in Angola and you want to order lunch. Okay, you first think, okay, what's the currency here? What language do they speak? What kind of food do they have? Right? Do they have child egg here? Right? Will they accept my card? Or do I need to pay cash? right? So imagine doing that every single day. That's the difference between working in a developed market and working in an emerging market, right? So those of you that are operating here, how many times do you just show up at work and then one katakata has burst? Either for those that are in regulated companies, one new regulation has shown up, or something has happened, NEPA took light on one of your platforms, money is just gone. So the difference in working in emerging markets like ours is that you can wake up in the morning and start trying to find your feet. You are not necessarily continuing from exactly where you stopped the previous day, right? So that needs to that because of that, right? You need to change the way you fundamentally think. So at any point in time, you need to be thinking a couple of steps ahead. And the only questions you need to really be asking, right, is what if and then what? This is basically the kernel of what's called second order thinking. And what I'm trying to express to you guys is that not only is it important for you to be a second order thinker, it is very important for your team to think like that as well. Because for you to be successful, it's not only by your decisions, it's by your team's decisions as well. Right? And I think this needs to be basic in emerging markets simply because you cannot just step outside your house and order lunch. Everything may have changed. Okay? Next slide, please. Talent. So, lots of people complain about Jackbar, people leaving, and so on and so forth. Who knows if we did this conference again next year, how many of you are going to be here? But, good luck in all your pursuits. My point here is I'm looking for talent in nearly every conversation I'm having, right? Because, for instance, with operators, there are certain things that just stand out, right? Clarity of thought, the ability to take initiative, natural second order thinking, bias for action. So when I got to Migo, I hired nearly every high potential talent that fit into a job in the preceding 10 years that I'd had any kind of conversation with. And these conversations sometimes were quite random. I've hired somebody that has DM'd me on Twitter, and we just started talking about some tweet the person sent me. I've hired somebody that's helped me. I was wearing very high heels, and she helped me up the stage. I have hired people from the most random places, right? Because the day you now need them, you now make the call and be like, are you free? Oh yeah, come and join me on this wonderful thing. I have hired people across a negotiating table. I have hired people from vendors that have worked with me. So generally, in the country that we live in, you know, resumes are great, but you also want to hire from your interaction with the person. And you people have to have almost what's called a spiritual connection. In consulting, we call it the pizza test, where basically, if you're stuck in an airport, as consultants tend to do because the flight is delayed, will you eat with that person? If you can't eat with that person, I don't think you should hire them. Because I've done that. I hired somebody that I couldn't eat with. I didn't know at the time, but he definitely didn't want to eat with me. It didn't work out. Let's just say that. Right? So always be looking for talent. Next slide, please. This one is a big one. So if it's not happening now, it's going to happen the more confidence you get in your point of view. You're going to see a problem, you're going to walk into a room, and you're going to say, this is the answer to the problem. And nobody's going to agree with you. It doesn't mean you're not right. It just means they don't get it. And as an operator, you have to give people time to get your point of view. And sometimes you have to do the matter like Inception. So don't tell them what you need them to know. Just set them up so that they can figure it out themselves. Right? And what that means is you have to take a step back and figure out how people behave. Like, for instance, now, if you have a bloated budget and you put a CFO in the room, what's the CFO going to do? Cut the budget. Abi? Right? So you have to, when you put a marketing person in the room, what are they going to do? Ask you for more budget. Right? So you have to understand how people behave, understand how they react to information, and make sure that you are the one laying out the information for them. Okay? So that they too can make up their own mind. So there are always going to be skeptics and haters, people that don't get it, people that are even biased. They don't like you because of your accent. They don't like you because you're a man, because you're a woman, because you're Hausa, because you're Muslim, because you're Christian, whatever. They will just be hostile to your point of view, and you have to take time. So this thing cost me a promotion once. My boss as happens within big companies, you have to get general agreement that you want to promote somebody. And he argued for me to be promoted. But I was the head of strategy at the time. And it didn't work because he could see my work, he valued my work, he understood what I was doing. The other people didn't. So they were like, hey, why should we promote her? Plus, some of the work I was doing was outshining theirs. So they had reason, right? But, so my boss told me, look, if I push for you to get promoted now, you won't be successful. So let me put you in this role, right, where you have a revenue line, and then you'll be judged by the revenue line. And when I had that role for a couple of years, and I was blowing my numbers out of the water, there was no argument whatsoever. So what he did in that situation was basically say, look, this person is good, I think they can do the work, but he put me in a position to make a better argument for my promotion in the future with a different job. Okay, next slide, please. This is a framework I use to make sure that I never miss the mark when I'm generating revenue. I missed my revenue target once, but once I found this framework, it stopped happening. Okay, so imagine that you have to make money from a product, right? There are two types of risk you have to sit down and think about. And as operators, at the end of the day, you are always going to be pushing an initiative towards completion that generates revenue for your organization. Yes or no? Yeah. So there are two types of things that we need to start thinking about from the beginning. Can your company deliver this product? Does the market want this product? And especially when you're in emerging markets like ours, you have to give yourself and your time and your company time to figure that out. So what that means is, this originally is like a 3x3 matrix. So with execution risk here, right, you have to give your legal team time to figure out how to draft the contract. You have to give your technical team time to figure out how to do the code, right? You have to give your marketing team time to figure out how to build a campaign around this product, right? So that's where execution risk. And then market risk is, do customers even want it? So this originally is like a 3x3 matrix, which I've divided into 3 regions. So low here reflects cash cows. So for me now in my current role, this is voice revenue. This is maybe even data revenue. Anytime, any hour you pinch me, I know exactly how much money we're going to make there. Okay? There's a lot of certainty because we've delivered it. We've been delivering it for years. I know what customers want. I know everything I need to know about those products, right? Those are my cash cows. Now, when you start entering the region of, okay, we're not sure if customers want it or not, right? This might be maybe larger data bundles. Like I'm working on something now where I want bundles that don't expire. So here, where there's medium risk, medium market risk or medium execution risk, those are things that have deployed and are maybe ready to scale. But I don't really know exactly how much I'm going to make from them, right? The things with high risk, I have no clue. But we kind of think it's a good idea. We kind of think it's going to help us and it supports our strategy. We kind of think it's the right thing to do. But they're all out there. Now, what I do is now decide if I'm supposed to make 100 naira for the year, right? Or 100 million naira. 75 million is going to come from the cash cows. 22 million is going to come from the ready to scale, right? And then maybe 3 million from the rest. When you start thinking of your pipeline like this, you'll be a lot more comfortable, you'll be a lot more focused, you manage your resources completely differently. Next slide, please. One of the things that we don't do enough of, I remember when I said you need to study the situations you are stepping in as operators. One of the ways to do that is by understanding incentives, right? What makes people think? I know many incentives in this world are financial, but they're not always necessarily financial, right? So, like, why did I get up to do this presentation today? One, this isn't the first time Peace has asked me to do this, so I've said no to Peace more than once. And two, I don't have enough time in the day to mentor every single operator that asks me. So what this did was create an opportunity for me to clarify my thoughts, to start speaking to operators at scale in a way that works for me. That's why, even though I have a cold and I'm very uncomfortable now, this was important to me. Okay, so when you walk into a room and you're trying to get somebody to do something, you have to really observe them. Asking them helps, but people sometimes they aren't articulate about what they really want, right? But you have to observe them and figure out, what does this person want? And is it something I can align with? Right? Because when you enter a situation with another party and you don't know, you end up in something called the prisoner's dilemma. And a prisoner's dilemma, this is a classic strategy framework where you assess what happens when two people agree or disagree. Or if one person agrees first, what happens to the other person? It's called a prisoner's dilemma because let's say two people have committed a crime, right? And the dilemma is, who is going to confess first? So the person that, if they both decide to keep quiet, right? Let's say you get the medium outcome, which is everybody gets 2 years in jail, right? But if I confess first and leave you in the lurch, I don't go to jail, you go to jail for 5 years. Do you understand? So you have to sit down and figure out between the two of you, we have to really understand each other to decide, to understand whether we're going to both cooperate, right? Or both confess. Because if we both confess, what's that? If you both confess, both of you will now suffer and both go to jail. Okay? So I've modified it here again. You guys will get this slide to see how this works with two startups. This works with two departments inside a business, right? This works with anybody that you are interacting with. So if you don't know the other person, if you don't trust the other person, if you don't agree with the other person, if you don't know what makes them tick, they can go and make a choice that will screw you over in the future. So do your best to start understanding what makes people take and what their incentives are. Next one, please. I think this is the last slide. Aha! So this is a special request from Peace. Because people keep asking me what it takes to negotiate successfully. And I think we're used to entering negotiations and feeling like you want to come out on top. You want to have beat the other guy. But that actually really doesn't work. Those kind of negotiations, they break down after a while. So you may beat the other guy, but maybe that person will get up. Right? You want a negotiation that is more win-win, right? And you have to think about mutual gain as well as the perception of fairness, right? As well as ego, and also the potential for conflict. Like, you're not going to go and try and negotiate a deal with somebody that you hate, right? Or that you are likely to fight with, right? But in all of these things, the massive multiplier that can get you over the line or really hold you back, more than anything else, is leverage. So people ask me all the time what leverage is, right? And if you go back to my first couple of slides, I said first it's about self-awareness. Self-awareness for yourself, for your company, so that you know who you are, what you know, and why it's important to the other side. So you have to first have things like proprietary tech, specialized knowledge, better products and services, better culture. You have to have something that the other side needs, right? Then you have to know how to use it. You have to know how to use your leverage. Like, often people will come into my office, like when I was with Etisalat, and say, oh, it will make you more data revenue. And I'm like, you don't know the first thing about what I need to generate data revenue, right? Because a lot of startups with no users, no traction, basically no product, will say, oh, we need you to sell this product to your customers when customers are just chilling using the 10 megabytes that your product consumes. It will get you more data revenue. I'm like, how? I was like, it's better for you to put me in a position where you have users that I want. You have users that buy data consistently every month. Not users that are going to hop from one network to another. Not users that are going to buy 1 gig today, 100 meg tomorrow. Right? Prove that. And then come and see me. Because at the end of the day, as a telco, I have access to more marketing than you. I already have tens of millions of users. So I don't know what you are bringing to me that you don't understand. But every single day, startups will show up and say, we'll help you drive data. I'm fine. Try again. I've broken many, many startup founders' hearts by saying that. But again, that just came from a poor understanding of their leverage. But then, having said that, there are startups I have chased, right? Because those startups have users that are highly engaged. Do you understand? That use data under all kinds of services all kinds of circumstances, that rely on a connection, a continuous connection. That's what I want. That will come and buy data every month. right? That align specific discounts to longevity on the MTN network or the Etisalat, whatever network it is, right? So you have to really do a little bit better than the thing you hear everybody saying in the room. This is also where second order thinking comes in. Just go beyond the obvious nonsense, right? Get deep, ask questions. Even if you are wrong, I will respect you for trying. But don't come and give me the answer everybody's going to give me, right? And then, this is the hard part, right? But I'm here to give you ginger. Don't look desperate. Because the minute you come, like, and your opponent smells weakness, it's done. It's done. Right? So at least project confidence. Be willing to walk away. Right? Especially when you are a small company working with a big company. The big company will definitely use their leverage against you. So you have to make sure that you have structured your revenue so that the telco is not necessarily, or the big company is not the only road to meeting your revenue target. Okay? And you have to be able to walk away, get more traction, right? Look like you've grown, and then come back. Right? Because desperation and negotiation never go together. Okay?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Alex. I am a software engineer and the founder of Cultivate. Cultivate is an edtech platform, interestingly. And the question I have this morning is really simple. So Adia talked about understanding the people you are working with. So I have an employee base of about 15 people, right? So, but I have a particular, person who I find hard to actually understand how to navigate, because so it's more like he's not available when I need him to be available. And a couple of people have told me, okay, it's not about always correcting this particular person. So I really don't know. So I would like to know, if you were in my shoes, where you actually had an employee, you are paying this person, but it seems like money is not enough of an incentive, how would you navigate the situation?
Thanks for the question. So, you have to have a frank conversation with the person, right? So, and that conversation, should be guided by honesty and candor, and just be like, look, guy or girl, this is where I am, right? This is where we've reached. This is a crucial conversation. So I need you to put in as much as I'm putting in terms of honesty, right? So, and you need to, without getting into the minutia, just say, look, I expect this and I'm getting this, and this is the gap. How are we going to close it, right? So I think it's important that in that conversation, if you are interested in preserving the relationship, which you don't have to be, it's actually okay to separate employment from some people sometimes when these things don't work. But if you are interested in keeping the relationship, it's important for for the person to believe that you are on the same side. Right? So remember that equation I put up. If the person doesn't think you are on the same side, they're not going to trust you, they're not going to be honest, they're not going to tell you their mind. But it's also really important for you to understand that this conversation can also end with people going their separate ways. And that's okay. You have not committed a crime, you will still go to heaven. Okay? But I think it's important that you have a really honest conversation, and the person needs to know what is at stake and the gap in expectations. So don't be scared. I think, these tough conversations and even firing people is one of the big tests of whether you can be a manager or not. And the first time you have to fire somebody or even have a conversation like this, if you need a moment in the bathroom to go and cry, take it, right? Because these conversations, they suck. They are very, very hard. So I understand that, but you must have the conversation. Avoiding it is not going to create the solution. Yeah?
All right, thank you very much. Next up.
Hi, thank you so much. Your session was really amazing. My name is Grace Malik. I am a community manager. I'm a podcaster, a writer, and I have a community of my own called the Thriving Creatives Community. It's basically for creatives in Nigeria and in Africa to thrive in the digital economy. So you made a statement, to be a great operator, you have to push past all that resistance without overtly persuading or instructing. Now, I recently started a community management job at an organization. And as a community manager, I'm used to driving initiatives. I'm very, I can be spontaneous. Like, I think of something random and I drop it in my community and everything is going well. But in this organization, there are a lot of stakeholders. So it's been really hard. Yesterday, I stepped into the bathroom at work and I cried my eyes out. I was so frustrated. I had a row with my team lead, and it was draining. So I cleaned my eyes out. I cleaned my eyes, came out, opened my laptop, and went back to work. But it's just been really hard at this particular place because maybe because I'm not used to so much resistance from so many people. Like before you drive an initiative, you pass it through 5 different stakeholders. So I am not used to it. And I don't want to quit because I'm just like 3 months in. And it's like, can't you take a challenge? I took this job because of the challenge. But I think my question is, based on that line, how do I deal with managing so many stakeholders where I have my hands full with the job that I have to do? Thank you so much.
Okay, so I have to break something to you. It's not going to change, right? Like, after this job, your next job is going to be bigger with maybe more stakeholders, right? Maybe even a regulator, right? So imagine how many stakeholders I have to deal with. I have a team of 100 plus people, right? I work, Nigeria earns the most for MTN Group, right? Almost half of profits out of 18 other countries. So the number of people I have to convince, right, anytime I want to do something is a lot. I think you usually will run into that frustration, right, when you are instructing. I think you need to be able to put your money where your mouth is and prove that you are right without saying you were right or saying I told you so. You can tell other builders, I told them, they didn't listen, I showed them, right? Hard, say that with your gang. But it's really, really important for you to spend more time showing than telling. So you need to figure out a way, if you want to do something, right, explain to the person, okay, let's try it out, right? Just give me a chance and then we'll see, right? Like I said, even when I was presenting, I told you, you are probably right, okay? But you can't enter the room saying, this is what we should do, and I don't feel like I have to explain myself to you. Everybody has an oga at the end of the day, right? So, and then the other thing is, you also need to create opportunities for the people around you to learn. So that's one reframe that's also helped me, is that just because I know something and the way I approach a problem is informed by my own context, I have to give other people who don't have that context the opportunity to learn what I have learned. And if I just walk into a room instructing, then I'm really taking that learning opportunity away from them. So do what you can to create that inception moment for them, the one that you had, right? Go back to what helped you learn that that step you want to take is the right step, and then recreate it for them. Remember, I told you this was the hard one. Remember when we got to that slide, I told you this was hard. It's a hard thing.